Hello everyone and welcome to IT-KnowledgeBase. In this video, I would like to start a pfSense firewall series from the beginning to the most advanced configuration. We will cover comprehensive video lecture on installation, configuration, administration, and troubleshooting of pfSense firewall. pfSense is the most powerful router operating system and is a free and open source operating system for routers and firewalls. pfSense can be installed on most commodities hardware, including old computers and embedded systems. pfSense is typically configured and operated through a user-friendly web interface, making administration easy even for users with limited networking knowledge. Generally, one never needs to use a terminal or edit config files to configure the router. Even software updates can be done from the web UI. But in this video, I will cover how to install a pfSense firewall in our production or home-based network with separate network interfaces to LAN, WAN, and DMZ, but optionally configuring with VLANs. You could configure VLANs if you want for more security and isolation. Later on, after the installation, we will see in action how to configure ACB, AutoConfigBackup, in pfSense and how to reset forgotten or lost admin password. And this is the only official way to regain full control after you lost pfSense admin password in any scenario. By default, a pfSense firewall required two network interfaces in order to work perfectly. The first network interface should face your internal LAN for your all-purpose office internet. This LAN interface is always named a trusted network. We have typically repeatedly seen business-critical servers also exist in the same LAN range, which is certainly not recommended. All of your business-critical servers be completely isolated or out of your internal LAN to prevent from easily seeing from prying eyes. We will use the IP address range for our internal LAN 10.0.20.0/24 subnet, but we are security mindful and we will add our second interface and name it to DMZ, a perimeter network that protects an organization's internal LAN and suggests your best critical servers from untrusted traffic. Move all of your critical servers there and we will use IP address 10.0.30.0/24 subnet. The third interface, of course, we will add for WAN or for internet traffic, which is always named an untrusted or public network. And we will use a static IP on our WAN side interface because we will allow some inbound traffic from the internet to publish some internal service over the internet. Otherwise, DHCP or auto-assigned IP is fine. You can add more network interfaces as per your deemed requirements to create a separate security profile, which we will see later in our upcoming pfSense related videos. Initially, I will cover how to install the pfSense firewall and configure the very basic configuration. Configure pfSense firewall with the multi-homed, which means we will add 3 network interfaces with different IP ranges. pfSense is leading and widely used in penetration testing, designing, and implementing SOC labs. This is some way security related stuff, but a very informative and exciting video. This video is not new, but worthy to checking out. We have a virtualized lab environment with a VirtualBox, which I prefer, or you can use whatever you'd like to use. Let's understand the prerequisites required in this video for a successful demonstration. First, download the pfSense setup file from their respective website. It comes in the compressed.gz format. In the second step, extract the newly downloaded pfSense.gz setup file into .iso format. You can use WinRAR or 7-zip to extract it into .iso format. Then launch your hypervisor, whether you are using VirtualBox or VMware. Use whatever suits you best, but I will use VirtualBox here. Create a new VM, assign the RAM, video memory, virtual hard drive, and CPU, etc. Assign the network adapters for LAN, DMZ, and WAN. Visit the pfSense.org/download website and download the compressed installation file. I have already downloaded it in my downloads folder and extracted the compressed pfSense.gz into a .iso file. Launch VirtualBox or any hypervisor you like to create and install a new VM of pfSense. But we must first add our required virtual network adapter here, so we can use them later in the pfSense firewall to give more privileges. To add virtual network adapter, go to the Tools, and select network. Select the NAT network and click create. Name this interface NAT LAN for our internal LAN and specify the IP address range here 10.0.20.0/24 and click apply. Now add another network, click create. Type network name network v-DMZ for our servers should be located at DMZ and specify the IP address range here 10.0.30.0/24 and click on apply again. Now create a new VM by selecting machine tab and click on new. Type the name of this VM pfSense 2.6.0. Folder location default is fine for me. If you like, you may change it to your best. Attach pfSense ISO file. Choose type BSD and version FreeBSD 64-bit. In the hardware tab, set memory size to 2048 equals to 2 GB and CPU core set it to 2. In the hard disk tab, name the virtual disk image to default. File size 16 GB is fine for me. Hard disk file type VDI is fine. Click finish. Select the VM and click setting. Select display. Slide the video memory or do it manually to 128. Select storage. Click on the CD-ROM drive. As we have already attached the ISO file, but in case you forget to attach, you can add this though here. Select network. Click the adapter 1 tab and set the attach drop-down to your NAT LAN adapter. Click the adapter 2 tab. Check the enable network adapter and set the attach drop-down to NAT B DMZ adapter. Click the adapter 3 tab. Check the enable network adapter and set the attach drop-down to WAN adapter. Click OK. Make sure the pfSense VM is selected and click on Start and tab on Normal Start. Press Enter to accept the copyright and distribution notice. Select Install pfSense and press Enter. Select the keyboard mapping to use. Default is fine. Press Enter. Select Auto ZFS, guided route on ZFS disk setup. I personally recommend using ZFS instead of UFS. Watch my earlier video, Reset Forgotten or Lost Admin Password, the only official way to regain full control, where I have discussed in great detail about why ZFS is recommended file system in pfSense and always superseded over UFS. Press Enter. Leave everything to default on the ZFS configuration page and just hit Enter. In a lab, we are not concerned about hard disk mirroring. Leave everything default and hit Enter. Place a check mark on the available virtual hard drive and hit Enter. Again, in the ZFS configuration, here is your last chance to save your existing data if you have any. But in our case, we are preferably installing a bare metal pfSense firewall. So it's okay to select yes and hit enter. Wait for pfSense to copy files and install. At the manual configuration prompt, select no and press enter. Select reboot and press enter. From the virtual box, don't forget to remove the attached ISO file. Go to devices, select optical and remove disk from virtual drive. Reset the VM by selecting machine and reset from the VirtualBox menu if your VM booted once again with pfSense.iso file. After the installation, your pfSense console screen should look like this, and you are welcome to your first pfSense installation and its terminal. Configuring network interfaces and web user interface or web UI. At the pfSense menu, before you assign the interfaces to your desired points, it's a bit tough to understand which interface is facing your LAN, DMZ, and WAN points. And the easiest way to identify is you should know the interface's MAC addresses. So then you could effortlessly identify and assign interfaces precisely, which in our case, we have noted down all interfaces MAC addresses. So let's assign the interfaces now. Select Assign Interfaces by type 1 and press enter. Would you like to set up VLAN right now? In our case, we are not. So we should not select here and type no and hit enter. Enter the WAN interface. In our case, EM2 is our WAN interface because we know their MAC address. Now enter the LAN interface. In our case, EM0 is our LAN interface because we know its MAC address as well. And last but not least, of course, enter the optional interface. We will make this interface for our DMZ, and this is EM1, and hit enter. Do you want to proceed? You have to certify your configuration. Type yes and hit enter. In the next step is to assign the IP address on each interface, or you can say on a router interface, which should be the same as their range. Select Set Interface IP Address by typing 2 and press enter. Enter the number that corresponds to the LAN interface, and we are more concerned with our LAN type number 2 and press enter. Enter our LAN IP address on the same subnet as your LAN. In our case, we would like to assign 10.0.20.27 to our LAN interface and hit enter. At the bit count prompt, type 24. We are using 24-bit subnet mask here and press enter. Leave the IP version 4 upstream gateway blank and press enter. Leave the IP version 6 address blank and press enter. At the DHCP server prompt, type no because we don't need DHCP right now and press enter. At the revert to HTTP prompt type yes, we need it, press enter. The HTTP address of the pfSense web UI or web user interface will be displayed on your screen. Press enter to return to the main menu. Minimize the pfSense VM and open a web browser in your LAN computer. This PC should be in your same LAN range. In this demo, we are using Linux Mint as a client PC. First, let's check the ping response from our router or pfSense firewall to check if we are able to access within the same lab range. Open up your terminal. Initiate a ping command to your pfSense firewall IP address. Yes, we are getting response. Open up a web browser. And navigate to the web user interface HTTP, which is in our case http://10.0.20.27 is our pfSense IP address and hit enter. Log into the web user interface with the default username admin and password is pfSense. Press next on your welcome to pfSense page. On the NetGet global support page, press next. On the general information page, I would recommend just entering the host name and the domain name if you like, else leave all as default and press next. Set the time zone and press next. Configure the WAN interface if you have static or PPOE settings. In my lab, we have configured with DSCP on WAN, so it's okay for me to press next. Configure LAN IP. We have already configured this from the console, which is primarily very imperative. Otherwise, you could not get web user interface of pfSense for your further configuration. Press next. Set the admin password to something more complex and press next. Now simply click on reload. pfSense now reload all the provided information persistently and give you wizard completed page. Now just click on the finish button. And finally, you will see the copyright and trademark notice from NetGet. If you would like to read, then read it. Otherwise, simply press accept and close on the thank you page. We have already assigned our interfaces through the pfSense console, and the only left is to add the DMZ interface. We would like to add it through the pfSense web user interface. Go to interfaces, opt 1, click enable interface, rename the description, change the IP version 4 configuration type to static IP version 4. Scroll down and provide your NetB or network B DMZ IP address, which is in our case according to the network diagram is 10.0.30.27/24, and click on save, then apply the changes. Now go to the firewall, click on rules, click on DMZ interface, and create all outbound traffic rules. TCP protocol should be any. Source should be your DMZ network. And the destination will be any. Click save and click apply. We have a Postfix SMTP server in our DMZ network. Just double check their IP address and should be able to access our internal and external network. Yes, this machine is now be able to access our internal pfSense local IP address. Now do some pings to our external destinations. Yes, we will be able to access our external networks as well. In future videos, we will extend our usage in the pfSense and configure pfSense firewall with the true enterprise grade firewall. Enjoy exploring your newly deployed pfSense firewall now. In this lecture, we will see how to configure the automatic backup of pfSense with the AutoConfigBackup service. Configuring backups is one of the critical parts of a healthy system environment. pfSense has multiple options to set up configuration backup. pfSense has option to configure the AutoConfigBackup service that is built into the software. This is a great and easy way to set up automated backups of your pfSense configuration. There is one caveat with this automated auto-config backup service. The configuration is stored in the cloud. Although the configuration is stored encrypted, we have no guarantee that the backup is always ready to be restored because we have no control over the storage location. As an alternative, Netgate has provided a couple of alternative ways to back up your pfSense configuration outside of your premises LAN, and you can automate the pfSense configuration backups to your own server or storage via the curl command. Using the AutoConfig Backup Service, or ACB for short, is available as a core component of pfSense software. The service is absolutely free for all the users of pfSense softwares Plus and Community Edition. This feature is located in the pfSense at Services tab, and click on AutoConfig Backup, which comes very top on the Service tab. In this lecture, I am going to demonstrate how to configure pfSense to automatically backup its configuration file. AutoConfig Backup is also very handy in the scenario where you have misconfigured something accidentally, or your pfSense firewall behave like crashing and you wanted to recover everything instantly without rebuilding your firewall once again from the scratch. Alright, so roll this clip and move on to our next slide. Network diagram. This is our present scenario where I am illustrating pfSense extensively, using as a border edge firewall, proxy, caching, routing, and for segregating our zones from a security perspective. This is our primary pfSense firewall, portraying full-time busy. However, we can employ another pfSense firewall to act as a secondary and work in conjunction in case if primary pfSense firewall fails. And this is our bare metal pfSense firewall without involving any detailed configuration. Just provided WAN and LAN interfaces and make sure both interfaces are working connected to their respective network. But this is just for restoring the configuration of our primary pfSense firewall from the Netgate server using device key. I have organized the content in this lecture, and we will see first a short introduction to AutoConfig Backup, ACB or AutoConfig Backup functionality and benefits, encryption password, device key, configuring AutoConfig Backup or ACB, hands-on demo, and wrap up this lecture. Introduction to ACB. ACB or AutoConfig Backup is a service available as a core component of the pfSense software without an additional package needed to use it. When enabled, as soon as a change is made on the firewall or at regular intervals, AutoConfig Backup extracts the firewall configuration, encrypts it with a passphrase, and then sends it over HTTPS to the backup servers of Netgate, the developing company behind the pfSense. It is also possible to make a manual backup with AutoConfig Backup. Please note, only the most recent 100 encrypted configurations for each device are retained on Netgate servers. Functionality and benefits. When a change is made to the configuration on a firewall, AutoConfig Backup automatically encrypts the contents with the passphrase entered in the AutoConfig Backup setting, and then uploads the backup over HTTPS protocol to Netgate, the developing company behind the pfSense. This gives instant, secure offsite backups of a firewall with no user intervention. Backup saves on Netgate's third-party server. Only the most recent 100 encrypted configurations for each device are retained on Netgate servers. In case of an inadvertent event, you can also restore all the backups configuration in a brand new bare metal pfSense Plus or Community Edition. Only the most recent 100 encrypted configurations for each devices are retained on Netgate servers. Encryption password. Securing the password and any serious assets is the biggest challenge nowadays. You have to give your serious attention to securing dependents of your AutoConfig backups. Encrypting password is one of those. Before the configuration is transmitted to Netgate servers, the firewall encrypts the backup using the AES-256 CBC algorithm and a password created by the firewall administrator on the setting tab configuration. This password is only used locally by AutoConfig Backup and is not transmitted to remote servers. When restoring a backup from the list of available remote backups, the contents are downloaded and then decrypted with the configured encryption password. Please keep a careful record of the encryption password. The backup content cannot be recovered if the password is lost. The password is private and only known to the local firewall only. Neither Netgate nor anyone else will be able to assist in reading the encrypted backups without the password. Device key. The AutoConfig backup servers requires a unique identifier to identify a specific firewall. This identifier is required to save or restore a backup configuration. ACB uses the SHA-256 hash of the SSH public key on the firewall for this purpose. The device key is located on the Services tab AutoConfig Backup menu item under the Restore and Backup Now tab. Please keep a careful record of this device key. If the device key of a firewall is lost, there is a chance it can be recovered. The setting page allows the entry of a hint which is stored in the data store alongside the encrypted backup entries. If the hint is distinct, the NetGate support team may be able to use it to recover the device key. However, do not count on this though. Configuring AutoConfig Backup. To adjust the settings, navigate to Services menu, click on AutoConfig Backup and Setting tab. All these are important and compulsory fields to understand and configure before you start taking auto backups. Enable ACB. Check this box to activate the AutoConfig Backup service. Backup frequency. Two options are available. Number 1, automatically backup on every configuration change. This is to perform a backup on every configuration change. Number 2, automatically backup on a regular schedule to perform a timed backup of the configuration, or if you wanted to schedule your backup. Schedule, if we choose to make a backup on a regular schedule, we need to specify the hours and days of backup. The format to be used is the cron format. Encryption password, here we have to care for our password or passphrase closely. Since the backup data is uploaded to third-party servers, it is important that this passphrase is significantly robust. If the passphrase is lost, there is no possibility to restore backup content. So you have to securely write it down in an extremely secure location. Hint or identifier. It is possible to specify an identifier. This identifier will be stored as plain text metadata along with the encrypted configuration. This field could be useful only if you have a support subscription with NetGate. Please note, however, that NetGate officially warns that they do not guarantee they can recover backups with this hint. Manual backups to keep. This is the last and final configuration step. The number of manual backup to keep a maximum of 50 retained manual backups of the 100 total backup is permitted. We propose to fix it to 10, which we think is a good compromise. Limitations of AutoConfig Backup. The AutoConfig Backup service is very convenient because it is directly integrated into pfSense and it can be configured in a few clicks. With ACB, you will have regular backups and you will be the peace of mind in case of firewall failure. However, you should keep in mind that the backups are uploaded to the servers of a third-party company. Even if the files are encrypted, it could be a security flaw in a sensitive network architecture. By the way, you should be confident in the availability and reliability of the NetGate servers. If their servers crash, you risk losing some or all of your backups. For these reasons, if you decide to use AutoConfig Backup, we recommend coupling it at a minimum with regular manual backups. Demo content. In this demo, we will go through and see it in action. Configure ACB is fairly simple. First, we will look into how to configure ACB, then test some basic backup functionalities. Then we will move on to make some manual backups and restore our configuration from ACB backups. Finally, we will conclude our demo lecture to recover our firewall in a bare metal pfSense firewall. In the situation where you have misconfigured something inadvertently or your pfSense firewall behaves like crashing and you wanted to recover everything instantly without rebuilding your firewall once again from the scratch. Before we jump into configuring pfSense AutoConfig Backup, here I really like to share some practical suggestions to all the pfSense administrators. Once your pfSense firewall is installed and you have correctly configured your LAN and WAN interfaces to access internal and external networks, the next very first and foremost step I would like to advise, you should configure AutoConfig Backup immediately and start recording every firewall configuration changes that you are going to make. For example, creating and altering firewall rules, net rules, VPNs, etc. in the essence of restoring or reverting to previous state in case you have found some misconfiguration and confronted the unforeseen situation, or might be someone has changed settings and firewall start behaving bizarrely, and then here you have the opportunity to retrieve or revise your configuration versions in the previous state. To do so, let's start configuring pfSense AutoConfig Backup. Log into your pfSense firewall, navigate to Services tab, AutoConfig, and then click on Setting. Click Enable ACP. In the backup frequency, Select automatically backup on every configuration changes. You can also go with the automatically backup on a regular schedule if it meets with your backup ration. When we choose to make a backup on a regular schedule, we need to specify the hours and days of backup, the format to be used in the cron format. But in this demo, we will go with the automatically backup on every configuration change. Then type your secure password or passphrase. Type your hint identifier. This may allow the NetGate support team to locate your key should you lose it. Manual backups to keep. This may really depend on you, but I would specify 10, which is definitely the best fit for my requirement, but you can specify as per your best fit. Click on Save. Now we have enabled AutoConfigBackup. To test our AutoConfigBackup functionality, make appropriate changes to force a configuration backup, such as creating, editing, and saving some firewall or net rules. For the successful demonstration, I am working to create and modifying some net and firewall rules to see how the restoration process impresses and works the restore our significant configuration on the production server in real time. I am going away to create the net rule first. In this demo, I am creating net rule for incoming SSH connection to my secure Linux box for remote administration. Click Add and configure appropriately as per your condition for authorized incoming SSH request to our business critical Linux server. Creating another rule for one of our Microsoft member servers for authorized incoming RTP traffic. Click Apply Changes. Now navigate to Services, AutoConfig Backup tag, and click on Restore. Look for the new backup in the list. It might take some time though. Cannot show your changes here instantly, hence it requires some time to complete the backup process to the NetGate third-party server and make it available in the list to restore on demand. It might take 15 to 20 seconds to show up here, but sometimes involves more delay due to strange constraints, and it should not take more than a minute. Here is your recent net rules creation backup. Okay, now we have seen how to enable and configure AutoConfig Backup or ACB in the pfSense firewall. And we have created some net rules to effectively get real-time configuration backup in the ACB. In contrast, we also have imperative freedoms to do manual backups, and which should be made before an upgrade or a series of significant changes. ACB will store a manual backup specifically showing the reasons, which then makes it easy to restore if necessary. Since each configuration changes triggers a new backup when a series of changes are made, it can be difficult to know where the process started. To force a manual backup of the configuration, navigate to Services, AutoConfig Backup, click the Backup Now tab, enter a revision reason. I am going to type full backup just for demonstration purpose. Click Backup. At this point, I would like to share a backup tip with you. Take a manual backup prior to upgrading to a new pfSense software release and name the backup so close to the purpose of taking a full backup. So the reason for taking a full backup was made it clear. Now let us see how to restore our configuration. To restore configuration, first let's create a scenario. Primarily, I am going to delete and do some changes in the NAT and firewall rules purposely. This may convince our firewall to start some restraints.
Okay, now we have successfully deleted and altered some rules for demonstrating purposes. Now navigate to Services, AutoConfig Backup, and click on the Restore tab on the top. Here you are emphasized to give your best and sincere attention. Please make a safe copy of this ID value. If it is lost, your backup will be lost too. Locate the desired backup in the list. For each backup, devote 3 actions that can be performed. Restore, it restores this revision, but a restart is recommended after the restore. Visualize or show info, displays the config file in XML format. And the last is delete, which deletes the configuration or the entire backup file. Click the restore or undo icon to the right of the configuration now. Here I have deleted some net rules. Restore this revision. Are you sure you want to restore? Yes. Okay. Now click on another net rule. Should be restored now. Press OK. And I have altered some firewall rules as well. I have deleted some firewall rules. I have disabled some firewall rules. Click to restore to enable the firewall rule. Now let's jump back and see whether our configuration is restored or not. Go to the net. Yes, I have successfully restored my net configuration. The firewall will download the configuration specified from the AutoConfig Backup server. It decrypts it with the encryption password and restore it in your pfSense firewall accordingly. After restoring, a GUI presents a prompt offering to reboot. Please note here, if the restored configuration changes anything other than the NAT and firewall rules, then choose yes. Your firewall is now backed up regularly and you know how to restore your configuration from a backup made by AutoConfig Backup. But here is a warning. By default, the firewall will not initiate a reboot. Depending on the configuration items restored, a reboot may not be necessary. For example, firewall and NAT rules are automatically reloaded after restoring a configuration, but interface configuration are not. If the disk in your primary pfSense firewalls fails, or if the SSH key changes due to a reinstallation of pfSense software, the ACB service can restore all of your backups from the previous installation as long as the device key and the ACB's encryption password of the previous installation are both known, or you can prudently say you should have all your corporate pfSense firewall, device ID and encrypted ACB's backup password in your hand, which I emphasize from the beginning to note down at the safe place after you configure your ACB from the start. Or you can say if you wanted to restore your pfSense firewall configuration from one pfSense to another pfSense, then you can simply follow this bare metal restoration process. In this demo, let's assume in your data center, your primary corporate pfSense firewall is not working, or you are facing some sort of that might be catastrophe cyber attacks, hardware failure, or some sort of malfunctioning. Then you simply need to replace the failed disk or pfSense, install pfSense software from the scratch on the new disk, configure LAN and WAN interfaces. Please note, this is an undeniably new bare metal pfSense operating system without any prior configuration of automatic backup config. Navigate to Service, AutoConfig Backup, and Setting tab. Click Enable ACB. Set the encryption password to match the previous installation. Type your hint identifier, manual backup to keep, and click on Save. Navigate to the Restore tab. Now here you have to paste the old device ID key into the device key field. Simply copy and paste it here. click on Submit. Here you are emphasized to give your best and sincere attention. Please make a safe copy of this device ID. If it is lost, your backup will be lost too. This temporarily shows and allows ACB to display a list of backups for an alternate device key. Navigate to your previous or primary pfSense firewall backups which you want to restore and restore it. In this demo, I am going to restore the full backup taken earlier. You can click Reset to restore the native ID for this firewall. Once the firewall has been rebooted, it will be running with the configuration backed up before the failure. Please note, if you are restoring full backup from your failed pfSense to a new bare metal pfSense, all the configuration including interfaces IP of LAN and WAN will also be restored, and you have to access your new bare metal pfSense with your last pfSense IP. Reboot the firewall to full activate the changes. Press yes. Now I have powered off my primary pfSense to access the alternate pfSense with the same IP address. Now you can see all my primary pfSense firewall configuration is restored in the new bare metal pfSense firewall along with all the necessary configurations. I sincerely appreciate it, and I am pleased. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions to raise IT knowledge base, either share in the comment section or send me an email to my private address. If you want to see more awesome training content, make sure you click that subscribe button. Click it so you don't miss it. Thank you. Back again with another actual informative and very exciting video. Do you love the basics of merely genuine password resetting options in the pfSense firewall? Then you will be going to enjoy this video. In this video, I will specifically talk about how to reset your forgotten or lost pfSense default login admin password without losing the firewall configuration. At the time of this recording, pfSense latest version is 2.6.0 release. This is a very precise video lecture that includes imperative and new material. It's slightly longer due to the latest information that I am going to share with you, dear fellas. And it's very critical that you all should know before resetting the pfSense firewall, virtual or hardware appliance password. This is an essential precise video where I am attempting my best to demystify the pfSense fable and then cover two official methods to reset your lost or forgotten password reset procedure step by step. There are many circumstances when you may mislay or forget your pfSense firewall. Maybe you have forgotten your newly changed password for any reasons or lost it. Might be your firewall administrator has just changed for intelligence due to the company's CEO, ablaze type of circumstances. Keep in mind that user admin is the only default and highest privilege administrator account in the pfSense firewall. There are only two genuine ways to regain your pfSense firewall with full control without losing your firewall configuration. Please note, this is the only official and legitimate method without using any third-party rescue disk. Okay, do some super cool stuff. Let's jump into a quick and very informative pfSense firewall, a roughly new proposition. Content cover in this lecture. What does pfSense stand for and mean? Introduction to pfSense. A small list of all the pfSense features, common deployments of pfSense firewall, partitions and file system selections, Types of file systems available in pfSense. Two effective methods to reset the admin password. Validate pfSense file system, UFS or ZFS. Pros and cons. Password reset methods and advice for ZFS volumes as read-write. What does pfSense stand for or pfSense mean? The early tagline for the pfSense open source project was making sense of PF, referring to the packet filter technology at the core of the project. PF in FreeBSD can perform many of the basic packet filtering and quality of service firewall tasks. pfSense software make it easier to manage, monitor, and maintain. It completes this by layering an easy to use GUI and customized services on top of the operating system. A complete firewall, router, and VPN solution that is capable of much more than the sum of the underlying components. Introduction to pfSense. pfSense is open source, free, easy to use, and easy to build hardened FreeBSD based firewall and routing platform. pfSense also includes most of the features that are available only in expensive commercial firewall. pfSense can be used to turn a computer into a router and firewall. You can install pfSense on any physical machine or hypervisor. The most popular are Hypervisor 1. Corporates always prefer to go with Hypervisor 1, which is VMware E6i and Hyper-V. In Hypervisor 2, you can install VMware Workstation Pro, Hyper-V, and VirtualBox, and this is perfect for your lab and for your practice. pfSense can be used as a border firewall and protect your infrastructure. pfSense also supports full-featured proxy, routing, firewall, NAT, load balancing, multi-WAN, failover, and high availability. Corporates and data centers also using as a border edge firewalls and routers. This is a small list of pfSense vital features. You can go through them one by one, and I will definitely cover all the features in great detail in my upcoming videos. You can say confidently that pfSense includes most of the features available only in expensive commercial firewalls. That's why this product is extensively valuable and used in large data centers and NOC network operation centers as well. pfSense can meet the needs of nearly any type and size of network environment, from SOHO to data center environment. The common deployments of pfSense, and you can turn this firewall into a perimeter firewall, a LAN router, a WAN router, special purpose appliances. For examples, you can turn pfSense into a VPN appliance, a sniffer appliance, and a DSCP server appliance. You can go through this slide yourself for a much better understanding. Before we jump into the password reset section, we must have to understand pfSense file systems initially, because the password reset instruction is slightly different for each file system. Now let's talk about the partitions. It's very important for you to know which file system your pfSense firewall is using, because password reset procedures and their commands are very dependent on the different file systems levels. During the installation phase, you may have a clear choice to choose the ZFS file system, which is a default selection and recommended to install pfSense, or either go with the UFS. In our next slide, we will discuss and see some obvious differences between the ZFS and UFS file systems. During the pfSense installation, you may see the partitioning of your disk area. During the pfSense installation, you may see the partitioning options of your disk. Auto ZFS launch the ZFS configuration section of the installer. Auto UFS with BIOS option automatically creates partitions and formats the disk. With UFS and a traditional legacy BIOS style boot environment. Auto UFS UEFI support, it automatically creates partitions and formats the disk with UFS and a UEFI boot environment. You can also create the manual partitions. If you are an experienced administrator, you can manually create partitions and file systems. Or if you are super confident to manage partitions and file systems manually, you can use shell and rollout. I would recommend going with Auto ZFS instead, because it offers great recovery, optimization, and have great benefits to use with. There are two types of file systems available in the pfSense firewall: UFS Unix file system and ZFS Zettabyte file system, which is a default and recommended by my experience. Let's talk about some file system confines. UFS Unix file system. UFS is a file system unique to Unix. UFS remove descendant of the original version 7 Unix file system. UFS is an old version that has limitations on space and various other features. UFS is more compatible with Unix operating systems. UFS have a lesser storage capacity. UFS have certain disadvantages over ZFS. UFS is an open source software licensed under the Common Development and Distribution License or CDDL. UFS is out of the box now, not as robust as ZFS. If you are working constantly with lots of huge data, go with the ZFS file system. Some versions of Unix are not compatible with ZFS. UFS is the only option. UFS is a simpler file system, easier to understand and work with. ZFS, zettabyte file system. ZFS supports for high storage capacities, logical volume manager to combine file system. ZFS have unlimited snapshots, clones, file system, pool basis storage, self-healing, half-written log or configuration file if you lose power. ZFS have an integration of concepts of file system and volume management, snapshots and copy on write clones. ZFS have a continuous integrity checking and automatic repair. ZFS also support RAID Z and native NFS version 4 ACLs. It's open source software licensed under the Common Development and Distribution License or CDDL, recommended to use in its place of UFS, made up of a plethora of features and components. ZFS capacity is rather large in comparison to standard file system. ZFS does much better on power failure than UFS. There are only two official and effective ways to reset your pfSense user admin password. Method number 1. Reset the password directly from the pfSense within the unprotected console menu. Method number 2. Reset the password with a locked or password protected console. Please note, you must first validate the pfSense firewall file system, either running on UFS or ZFS. You can find the file system from the web configuration, web UI, and from the pfSense shell console. Please note, this is the only legit method to reset your pfSense password. To validate your pfSense firewall file system, whether it's running UFS or ZFS, log into your web configuration or web GUI interface. On the dashboard area, you may find the disk widget. Here you may easily able to see the file system type either using UFS or ZFS. The second alternative is during the pfSense bootloader menu, where pfSense loading kernel and a bunch of other stuff. You can easily see your pfSense file system either using ZFS or UFS. And certainly we will see it live in action later in this lecture. The third alternative is through the shell console. Either connect with the console cable directly to your firewall or open the virtual console if you are running pfSense as a virtual machine. Or you might boot pfSense firewall in the single user mode option to reset the password. In any case, just run the following command: fsck space -y space /. I must share file system timing here. pfSense software will run a file system check at boot when it detects an unclean UFS file system, typically from after a power outage or other sudden unclean reboot or shutdown. But this is absolutely not necessary for ZFS file system. There is no file system check equivalent for ZFS, and it is not prone to issues for which UFS and other file system types require checks and repairs. So after you run the command fsck space -y space /, either you get an output with the UFS ID as shown in the image 1. This is humble enough to understand which file system you are running on your pfSense firewall, or you may receive an error, no such file or directory, as depicted in the image number 2. In the ZFS file system, this is the recovering way to understand which file system is running into your pfSense firewall. Use this practice when you can say you really don't know the file system type and you've jumped into the password reset procedure. Through this, you can easily identify which file system you are using in your pfSense firewall. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of method number 1 and 2. This is very essential from a security perspective and follows the best approach to secure your pfSense firewall. Method number 1. Reset the password directly from the pfSense unprotected console menu. And the pros is, this is a quick and effective. Speedily reset the password in a few seconds. No downtime and no network outage. No data loss. All firewall rules, NAT, OpenVPN, routes, interfaces will remain as unbroken. Can be reset through a virtual machine console or with physical intervention to your firewall and connecting the console cable. Undeniably, old password is not required. Reboot is also not required. And the cons is, this is unsecured in any way. Anyone can reset the password. Anyone can reset the firewall in a factory default. This is the biggest security risk. Unrestricted administration through the console menu, and the firewall can be unresponsive. Method number 2, reset the password with a locked or password protected console. And the pros is, this is a protected and tenable. This is a security best practices. Only authorized can reset the password through the console menu. Only authorized can reset the firewall in a factory default after login with a valid username and password. No data loss. All firewall rules, NAT, OpenVPN, routes, interfaces will remain as unbroken. Undeniably, old password is not required and the firewall will be in the safe hands. And the cons is, cannot reset the password through the console menu because it's a password protected console. Surefire physical security is required. You have to boot pfSense firewall in the single user mode option. Required pfSense firewall to take offline in order to follow the password reset procedure. 2 consecutive reboots are required to accomplish and unspecified interruptions. Method number 1, understand the steps involved and follow in action. Reset the admin password directly from the pfSense unprotected console menu. Please note, connect in advance via serial connection to the pfSense firewall or connect the monitor and keyboard to display the pfSense console. If you are accessing your pfSense firewall over the network, then it's fine. Open the pfSense console menu, directly intervene or through the virtual console. Navigate and hit enter to option number 3. This is a reset web configurator web GUI password depicted in the image number 1. Check the verbose output, password and privileges. For the web configurator, admin will be reset to its default password, which is pfSense. The password for the web configurator web GUI has been reset to default for the username admin as depicted in the image number 2. Your password is now reset to its default. Now type admin in the username field and it's newly reset the default password, which is pfSense in this case. Whenever you see the warning about the admin account password being set to the default value, which simply means your admin account is having a default password that is a pfSense, it's really unsafe and you have to change it swiftly. Method number 2, understand the steps involved and follow in action. Reset the admin password from protected locked console menu, and this is for remount ZFS volumes as read-write. Connect in advance via serial connection to the pfSense firewall or connect the monitor and keyboard to display the pfSense console. If you are accessing your pfSense firewall over the network, then it's fine. Reboot the pfSense hardware or virtual appliance. Choose boot single user mode, option number 2 from the loader menu. Press enter when prompted to start and type /bin/sh:. Now remount the ZFS volumes and all the partitions as read-write. You have to type this command. If the above procedure produces an error, try this command. Next, mount all ZFS file systems, datasets, etc. You have to type this command. Now next, run the built-in password reset command to reset to the default password. Then follow the prompt to reset the password. Then run /sbin/reboot to reboot your pfSense firewall. Now you can log in with the default username admin and the password with pfSense. We encourage you to change the password to be more secure. First, verify and see how to protect or lock your console menu screen. Now verify your pfSense firewall shell console should be protected and you have no way to reset the password from the shell console as we did earlier in method number 1. Now only the option left in your hand is to take your pfSense firewall offline or in single user mode to perform the password reset method. Choose option number 2, boot single user. pfSense is loading kernel and a bunch of other necessary stuff. Here you can see the file system type as well. Now simply hit enter here. Now the password reset procedure is telling you that admin password and privileges will be reset to the default, which is pfSense. Press Y to proceed yes. Hit enter. Now type this command to reboot the pfSense. Your password is now reset to its default. Now type admin in the username field and it's newly reset the default password, which is pfSense in this case. Whenever you see the warning about the admin account password being set to the default value, which simply means your admin account is having a default password that is a pfSense, it's really unsafe and you have to change it swiftly. Reset the admin password from protected locked console menu, and this is for remounting UFS volume as read-write. Connect in advance via serial connection to the pfSense firewall or connect the monitor and keyboard to display the pfSense console. If you are accessing your pfSense firewall over the network, then it's fine. Reboot the pfSense hardware or virtual appliance. Choose boot single user mode. This is option number 2 from the loader menu. Press enter when prompted to start /bin/sh:. Remount UFS volume, all the partitions as read-write. You have to type this command and hit enter. Run the built-in password reset command to reset the default password. Enter this command and hit enter. Follow the prompt to reset the password. Now finally run /bin/reboot and hit enter to reboot your pfSense firewall. Now you can log in with the default login admin and password pfSense and change the password to be more secure. First verify and see how to protect or lock your console menu screen. Now verify your pfSense firewall shell console should be protected and you have no way to reset the password from the shell console as we did earlier in method number 1. Now only the option left in your hand is to take your pfSense firewall offline or in single user mode to perform the password reset method. Choose option number 2, boot single user. pfSense is loading kernel and a bunch of other necessary stuff. Here you can see the file system type as well. Now simply hit enter here. In my case, I have forcibly power off my pfSense firewall because the shell was password protected, and for the password reset procedure, I must have to restart my pfSense forcibly, and it's using the UFS file system type. That is why the file system is required to clean first. Just issue the command fsck -fy and hit enter. And this is the self-healing procedure in the ZFS file system. You have to execute this command twice to see the file system is clean. Now the password reset procedure is telling you that admin password and privileges will be reset to the default, which is pfSense. Press Y to proceed yes. Hit enter. Now type this command to reboot the pfSense. Whenever you see the warning about the admin account password being set to the default value, which simply means your admin account is having a default password that is a pfSense, it's really unsafe and you have to change it swiftly. I must have to pitch here one piece of advice if you are using the ZFS file system in the pfSense firewall. Single user mode is a special boot mode in which only the operating system kernel is loaded and a bare minimum of functions are available likewise, including file system checking, emergency tasks, password reset, etc. An additional piece of official guidance here for ZFS file system is read and write. If the system was put into single user mode from the shell menu as depicted in the image number 1, using the reboot menu, capital S option, the next boot command must be run and clear the configuration manually. This is the syntax. ZFS system will not automatically clear this configuration when exiting single user mode. It is safe to run this command as depicted in the image number 2, even if the system was not booted in that way. So always run this command on ZFS system before exiting single user mode. Failing to clear the next boot configuration will result in the system booting back into single user mode on every boot. That's all for the now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Every slides in this video is linked to each other. So I urge you to watch the entire video and understand the core concept of how to reset the pfSense firewall admin password efficiently. This is the complete and only official way to reset lost or forgotten pfSense admin password. I sincerely appreciate it and I am pleased. If you have any questions, comments or suggestions to raise IT knowledge base, either share in the comment section or send me an email to my private address. If you want to see more awesome training content, make sure you click that subscribe button. Click it so you don't miss it. Thank you.